For the Daily Ruckus, I'm Adam Clark. Today is Tuesday, September 16th, 2014. Are the conflicting messages coming out of the White House concerning the threat of ISIS simply a bad case of the Mondays, or did John Kerry just not get the memo? On CBS's Face the Nation, John Kerry argued that it doesn't really make a difference if we call U.S. action against ISIS a quote-unquote war.
Mr. Secretary, thank you so much. Can I clear up one thing first? This week, you went to some lengths to say you wouldn't call this a war, but yet at the Pentagon, the State Department even, they were saying we are at war with ISIS. Are we at war?
Well, Bob, I think there's frankly a kind of tortured debate going on about terminology. What I'm focused on, obviously, is getting done what we need to get done to ISIL. But if people need to find a place to land, in terms of what we did in Iraq, originally this is not a war. This is not combat troops on the ground. It's not hundreds of thousands of people. It's not that kind of mobilization. But in terms of Al-Qaeda, which we have used the word war with, yeah, we're at war with Al-Qaeda and its affiliates, and in the same context, if you want to use it, yes, we're at war with ISIL in that sense. But I think it's a waste of time to focus on that. Frankly, let's consider what we have to do to degrade and defeat ISIL, and that's what I'm frankly much more focused on.
At least the one thing we know that Kerry and Obama have in common, they both like flip-flops. While 40 other nations easily agreed to jump on board to help in the fight against the terror threat, the U.S. still has yet to decide. Not one to let Congress stop him from starting a war with something. Obama has declared that we are at war with Ebola. During a visit to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, President Barack Obama announced his efforts to combat the spread of Ebola in West Africa, which included the unprecedented deployment of 3,000 U.S. military forces. Not content with simply sending boots on the ground in order to help combat a microscopic enemy, the Department of Defense is also seeking to reprogram $500 million in funding from the department's quote-unquote Overseas Contingency Operations Fund in order to assist in the response. In addition, Obama has also requested another $88 million from Congress for the U.S. response, including $58 million to expedite the development of experimental treatments for Ebola. Who knew? All we had to do was just throw money at it. And lastly, in addition to the threat of Ebola and the war on ISIS, or was that the war on Ebola and the threat of ISIS? A series of unlikely new candidates have stepped up to throw their hats into the ring, and instead of waiting for us to declare war with them, they have declared war with us. And these guys are really steamed. Michael Snyder on the economiccollapseblog.com says the number of volcanic eruptions is increasing, and that could lead to an extremely cold winter. According to Volcano Discovery, a whopping 34 volcanoes are erupting around the globe right now. This is sending a massive amount of dust and ash into the upper atmosphere, and it may explain why many parts of the planet are experiencing strangely cold weather at the moment. If this trend continues, we could potentially be facing years of crop failures and widespread famines all over the world. This is a kind of quote-unquote climate change that everyone can agree on. It is well known that volcanic eruptions can substantially lower global temperatures. In fact, some global warming theorists are already blaming increased volcanic activity for why temperatures have not been rising in recent years. Quote, in the last decade, the amount of volcanic aerosol in the stratosphere has increased, so more sunlight is being reflected back into space, said lead author Benjamin Santer, climate scientist at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory, in a press release. This has created a natural cooling of the planet and has partly offset the increase in surface and atmospheric temperatures due to human influence. End quote. The possibility of volcanic eruptions substantially cooling our weather is the biggest quote-unquote climate threat that we are facing by far. Ruckus says if that's the case, we're in big trouble because our troops are already spread thin, not fighting imaginary foes, and waging war on microscopic enemies. I'm Adam Clark, and this has been the Daily Ruckus for Tuesday, September 16th, 2014. Please visit ruckusroomblog.blogspot.com for more. This has been a presentation of the Ruckus Room Reality Radio.